Warner Bros. Studios, Burbank, California. Stage 16, the Stunt Training Facility, October 14, 1998. Tuesday afternoon, 2:30 p.m. The air inside the facility is thick with the smell of rubber mats, leather pads, and decades of sweat. This is not a public space. This is where Hollywood's most dangerous sequences are choreographed and perfected before a single frame is ever filmed. The facility is windowless, lit by industrial overhead lights. Crash mats line one wall. Wooden training weapons hang on racks. This room has seen some of the greatest action performers in cinema history. But today, something different is happening. Something that was never supposed to become public knowledge. 15 people are present. Stunt coordinators, assistant directors, and production staff from the upcoming film Kiss of the Dragon. They are here for what was scheduled as a routine pre-production meeting. But the atmosphere does not feel routine. There is tension, the kind of energy that appears when egos are involved, when professionals are about to test each other. Standing near the center is Michael Garrett, 44 years old, 6 feet 1 inch tall, 195 pounds of functional muscle. He is wearing black training pants and a gray fitted shirt. He moves with the confidence of someone who has spent 25 years being paid to make action stars look good. Garrett is a former professional kickboxing competitor who fought in tournaments across Europe and Asia during the 1980s. He retired in 1989 and became one of Hollywood's most sought-after stunt coordinators, working on over 40 major films. But Garrett has a reputation for something else. He does not believe that traditional martial arts translate effectively to real combat. He has seen too many so-called masters come to Hollywood with impressive demonstrations, only to struggle when asked to perform realistic fight choreography under pressure. Garrett believes in pressure testing. If a technique cannot be executed under resistance, under stress, against an opponent who is genuinely trying to counter it, then it is not real. It is performance. Jet Li is also in the room, standing near the equipment racks with Corey Yuen, the film's action director. Jet Li is 35 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall, approximately 140 pounds, wearing simple black training clothes. His posture is relaxed. To someone unfamiliar with his background, he might appear unremarkable compared to the stunt professionals in the room. But everyone knows who he is. Former Wushu champion from China, 5-time national champion before the age of 20. Lead actor for Kiss of the Dragon, now making his transition into Western cinema. The meeting was progressing normally until the conversation shifted. Garrett had been explaining his approach to fight choreography, emphasizing realism and practical application for Western audiences. He made a comment about how traditional martial arts often do not translate well to film. Someone mentioned that Jet Li was a legitimate champion, that his Wushu background was competitive. Garrett responded with skepticism. He said that Wushu was a performance art, beautiful to watch, but not the same as combat training. The room went quiet. Jet Li simply listened. Garrett continued. He said that speed and acrobatics look impressive in demonstrations, but under real pressure, against someone trained in full-contact systems, those techniques often fall apart. The implication was clear. One of the assistant directors tried to diffuse the tension, but Garrett made a proposal. He said that if Jet Li was open to it, they could do a brief demonstration, a controlled sparring session to explore movement, timing, and reflexes. He presented it as a professional tool, standard practice. But the subtext was unmistakable. Garrett wanted to test Jet Li. Jet Li looked at Corey Yuen. They exchanged a few words in Cantonese. Then Jet Li nodded. Okay, we can do this. But we set conditions. The conditions were established quickly, full speed, but no contact. The goal was to demonstrate control, to reach the target without making impact. First person to make contact would concede. A test that Garrett had used before with other performers, a test he had never lost. The production staff cleared a space in the center. Garrett removed his shoes, as did Jet Li. The room fell silent. The 15 people positioned themselves along the walls. This was not part of the scheduled meeting. This was something else. Garrett settled into a fighting stance, his weight balanced, hands up in a guard position typical of kickboxing. He bounced lightly on his feet, testing his range. He looked ready. Jet Li stood across from him, approximately 10 feet away. He simply stood naturally, feet shoulder-width apart, hands loose at his sides. To the untrained eye, he looked unprepared. To those familiar with martial arts, it was a neutral position that did not commit to any specific technique. Garrett spoke first. "Ready?" Jet Li nodded. One of the production assistants was designated as referee. He hesitated, then said, "Begin." Garrett moved first, closing distance with a lead jab aimed at Jet Li's face. Fast, controlled. Jet Li moved his head just enough. The punch passed through empty space. Garrett followed with a low kick. Jet Li lifted his leg just in time. No contact. The people watching began to understand. Garrett was not holding back, but Jet Li was reacting without apparent effort. His movements were minimal, just enough to avoid strikes. Garrett increased his pace. Combination, jab, cross, hook, low kick, designed to overwhelm. Jet Li moved through it like water. His head slipped the jab. The hook cut through empty air. Throughout all of it, Jet Li's hands remained at his sides. He had not attempted a single counter. But what happened next changed the entire dynamic. Garrett, breathing harder now, decided to commit fully. He set his weight and threw a full-power straight punch directly at Jet Li's face. Not a controlled technique. A punch designed to stop someone. He believed the speed and power would force Jet Li to move, to retreat. The punch was fast. To most observers, it was a blur. Garrett's fist traveled the distance from his guard position to Jet Li's face in a fraction of a second, accompanied by a sharp exhalation, the kind of explosive breath that adds power to a strike. For an instant, it seemed impossible that anyone could react in time. But Jet Li did not move. Not his head, not his feet, not his body. He stood exactly where he had been standing. And Garrett's fist stopped. Not because Garrett stopped it, but because it reached the end of its trajectory. The punch was extended fully, Garrett's arm locked out, his fist hanging in the air approximately 2 millimeters from Jet Li's face. Close enough that Jet Li could feel the displacement of air, close enough that the kinetic energy was palpable, but not contact, no contact. The room held its breath. And then, slowly, 15 people began to notice something that Garrett himself had not yet registered. Jet Li's right hand was no longer at his side. It was extended, and it was positioned at Garrett's throat. Not touching, but close enough that the distance could be measured in millimeters, the same way Garrett's fist hovered near Jet Li's face. Jet Li's fingers were shaped in a specific configuration, what practitioners of certain traditional martial arts call a phoenix eye fist, a single-knuckle strike designed to target pressure points, nerve clusters, vulnerable structures like the throat. The positioning was surgical, the angle was precise. If Jet Li had chosen to extend his arm another 2 millimeters, the impact would have been immediate and devastating. They held that position for 3 seconds. 3 seconds that felt like an eternity to everyone watching. Garrett's fist extended toward Jet Li's face. Jet Li's hand positioned at Garrett's throat. Both men frozen in a tableau that made the hierarchy of speed and control undeniable. Then Jet Li lowered his hand, stepped back, and returned to his neutral stance. Garrett slowly retracted his arm, his expression shifting from focused aggression to something closer to confusion, to disbelief. The young production assistant did not know what to say. Technically, neither man had made contact. but everyone understood what had just happened. Garrett had thrown his fastest strike. Jet Li had not moved. And while Garrett's punch was still traveling, Jet Li had countered. His hand had simply appeared at Garrett's throat, as if it had been there the entire time. One of the stunt coordinators spoke quietly. "Did you see his hand move?" The other person shook their head. "No. I saw the punch. Then his hand was just there." Several others murmured similar observations. No one had seen the transition. The movement itself had been faster than their ability to process it visually. Garrett stood in the center, his mind clearly working through what had just occurred. He looked at Jet Li, and when he spoke, his voice was quieter. "How did you do that?" Jet Li's response was simple. "Training, understanding distance, understanding timing. You committed to your strike. Once you commit, your path is fixed. I did not have to move. I only had to be faster to the target." Garrett nodded slowly. He extended his hand. Jet Li shook it. "I have worked with a lot of martial artists. That was something different." Jet Li responded quietly, "You are very skilled. This was not about who is better. This was about showing that traditional training has value." Garrett nodded. "I understand. Thank you for the lesson." The tension dissolved. Several stunt coordinators approached Jet Li with questions about his training, about that level of reaction speed. Jet Li answered patiently, explaining that Wushu competition required split-second timing, that performing forms at full speed trained the nervous system to respond faster than conscious thought. Garrett stood off to the side, listening. One of his colleagues approached him quietly. "You okay?" Garrett nodded. "Yeah. I just got a reality check. I thought I understood speed. But that was something else." The production meeting resumed shortly afterward, but the atmosphere had changed. Garrett approached choreography discussions with new perspective, asking Jet Li's input more frequently. The working relationship shifted into mutual respect. Garrett later told colleagues that working with Jet Li taught him more about martial arts than any of his competition years had. The incident was never officially documented. No footage exists. The 15 people present were asked not to discuss what had happened outside the production. But over the years, the story circulated quietly within Hollywood stunt communities. Second-hand accounts spread. Details varied, as they always do, but the core remained consistent. A respected stunt coordinator tested Jet Li. Jet Li responded without ego, without theatrics. And in 3 seconds of frozen stillness, everyone watching understood they had witnessed something unforgettable. Garrett continued working in Hollywood for another 2 decades. He choreographed fights for major franchises, trained A-list actors, earned industry awards. But when asked about the most impressive martial artist he had ever worked with, he always gave the same answer: Jet Li. And if pressed to explain why, he would describe that afternoon in October 1998 when he threw his fastest punch and learned that speed without precision is just motion. That some martial artists operate at a level that cannot be taught, only witnessed. Jet Li rarely spoke about the incident publicly. In interviews, he emphasized collaboration, respect, and safety on set. He never mentioned names, never told the story as a personal victory. To him, it was simply a moment that clarified a principle, that martial arts are about understanding, not domination, about showing what is possible, not proving what is superior. 15 witnesses, 2 professionals, 3 seconds of stillness that demonstrated more than an hour of sparring ever could. October 14th, 1998. Warner Brothers Stage 16. The day a Hollywood stunt coordinator learned that traditional martial arts, when trained at the highest level, are not performance. They are precision. And precision, when executed with complete control, is indistinguishable from the impossible.